that healing doesn't thrive in solitude. Healing doesn't thrive by giving to others only. We've got to pause and do our own work. And in so many ways, I was the friend that was always there for everyone, always supported everyone, yet alone. And I had so many friends who come up to me and say, gosh, you're such a good friend, but you don't allow us to be a friend to you.
Welcome back to the Holistic Hormones Podcast with me, Dr. Ami Patel, pharmacist and hormone consultant. I've transformed my pain, struggle, and journey with managing my PCOS into my passion to support women to gain freedom from their hormone imbalance symptoms. On this podcast, I share practical tips that have worked for me and my clients, as well as conversations from experts in their field. Today's episode is a guest episode, and I'm really excited about our guest speaker today, Ektha Aggrawal. Thank you for being here today, Ektha. A little bit about Ektha before we get into the conversation. Ektha is a licensed clinical social worker and a multifaceted leader in the field of mental health, distinguished by her role as the founder of both Shakti Therapy and Healing Services and Jiva Mental Health. At Shakti Therapy, she pioneers a holistic and psychotherapeutic approach, emphasizing the profound interconnectedness of individual well-being with the broader fabric of life, recognizing that our health, actions, and spirits are deeply intertwined with both the natural world and our communities. Ektha integrates ancient Eastern wisdom with contemporary scientific methodologies to address the root causes of mental distress rather than merely easing symptoms. Her innovative treatments include crystal healing, psychedelic-assisted therapy, and other holistic interventions aimed at facilitating deep transformative healing. Oh my God, that sounds so amazing. In addition to her clinical practice, Ektha is the driving force behind Jiva Mental Health, which she founded to specifically address the mental health needs of South Asian communities, promoting open dialogue and reducing stigma in culturally sensitive ways. Her work with Jiva Mental Health and Shakti Therapy emphasizes creating safe, supportive environments where individuals can thrive and heal. An accomplished speaker and thought leader, Ektha actively contributes to the mental health discourse at seminars and corporate panels nationwide, including engagements for major corporations like NVIDIA, focusing on mental wellness within AAPI communities. Her scholarly and advocacy efforts have been published in venues such as Science Direct, Good Indian Girl Blog, Brown Women's Health, and Women's Web. Oh my gosh, so much experience and knowledge. Thank you so much for taking your time out to be with us and share it all with us today.
Thank you, Ami, for having me on here. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be in partnership with you.
Yeah, and actually I said all, but I mean, there's only so much we can cover because there's so many great things to talk about. So we could always do another episode. But before we get into the conversation, I always like to ask, like, how did you get into this space and what is the why behind what you do? Because, you know, as you mentioned, or as I mentioned in your introduction, like a lot of this is very taboo and not really like safe or not considered safe or comfortable for people to talk about. So what got you into this space?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's something I think about. It changes a lot every time I give it some thought, like, what is my why? I will say my journey in this like mental health space began in a very deeply personal way that's rooted in my own experience of trauma and witnessing mental health struggles in my own family. From a very young age back in Tanzania, I learned to really wear this like mask to hide all the scars of my trauma, to cope with the secrets of my family, the secrets of my mom's undiagnosed mental health disorder, of bullying, of the immigration process, and the challenges that come with it. And there's so much tied to the South Asian community. And growing up, I realized we really learned to handle pain with this silence, and the silence is this guardian or protector for us. But in its process, although it's supposed to protect us, it actually isolates us and it leads us to feeling unsupported. And for many years post-college, I dedicated myself to helping others, and hence the birth of Shakti therapy and healing services, thinking that by supporting others, by saving others, I'd be saving myself. And, the turning point in my life came when I realized that healing doesn't thrive in solitude. Healing doesn't thrive
Mm,
by giving to others only. We've got to pause and do our own
yeah.
work. And in so many ways, I was the friend that was always there for everyone, always supported everyone, yet alone. And
Yeah.
I had so many friends who'd come up to me and say, "Gosh, you're such a good friend, but you don't allow us to be a friend to you." And
Wow.
that's because I had this like strong facade on that I've got it. I've got to cover my pain, mask it, shield it, that I didn't even give them an opportunity to be there for me. So that really birthed the next evolution of my life. And that's where Jiva came in, where it's this realization that, gosh, in healing, it is community, it is vulnerability, it
Mm,
is this collective safety that we get to create together. And our goal isn't just to provide mental health services, but really to transform that fabric of mental health so it's perceived differently in the South Asian community and the greater AAPI community. And so when we think about what is the why that drives my desire, it's truly to ensure that everyone must feel safe in their darkest moments and not alone the way that
mm,
I did. I really
yeah.
um I really envision a world where no one has to hide from their pain and they can feel fully accepted for who they are and loved for who they are. And we can create these spaces where the whole self is welcomed in their true, authentic nature.
Wow. Yeah, I absolutely love
It's
that. And
loaded.
I know, I'm like, where do I start? No, I can definitely like you're so passionate about like mental health because of the experience you said. And I definitely understand like the feeling of isolation. Like that's how I felt with my PCOS. And that's how, I started doing what I do. And it's so great to like connect with someone. And I feel like when women are in these like very, I don't know, like I guess different than conventional or easy. It's not easy doing that. And it's definitely like the
Yeah,
passion and the why that, keeps you going and keeps
yeah.
me going. But yeah,
I
definitely.
always tell people our pain is our purpose if we can begin to heal from our pain. And so it sounds like even for you, when you went through your medical experience, it's what's driven you to be who you are today and to serve in such a beautiful way.
Yes, exactly. And I definitely appreciate that your friends said, like, let us help you. Those are some really good friends, and they're not just, taking from
Yeah.
you. And like, I did an episode earlier this month on like how to say yes to yourself, your mental health, and your physical
Ooh.
health. And in
Uh-huh.
that, I talk about like also taking care of yourself and giving from a full
Yeah.
cup. So,
Yeah,
yes.
something we don't think about is that friendship is a give and take, and a lot of us see friendship as always giving, especially in the Asian American community, because we are so generous and we are so community oriented. But
Yeah.
friendship is also being vulnerable. And that is one of the hardest things to do. But when you're vulnerable, you gift the friend the opportunity to be there for you. And I think that that's such a magical, selfless experience sometimes.
Yeah, that is. I like the way you put that. You allow you allow your friend to gift their friendship to you by being there for
Yeah.
you. Yeah. So I want to ask you from what we talked about earlier, like a holistic approach to mental health. What does that mean exactly? And I like how you said, addressing the root cause and not just easing symptoms, which medications do. And I
Hmm.
bring that up as a pharmacist, and because like with PCOS, a lot of times people, or even women's health in general, like people are just given like band-aid solutions. And there's definitely a time and place for medications, and it can supplement the holistic approach as well. So can you tell us a little bit about what your holistic approach to mental health is?
Absolutely. So I like to see it as we help not only put out fires, we help you catch the arsonists. So there
Mm,
is absolutely a time where you need to put out the fire first. And that's
Hmm.
where things like medication come into play, medical procedures, even most traditional therapies put out the fire. We're crisis management in that sense. But as a holistic practice at Shakti Therapy, we like to just catch the arsonist. So that way there's just no more fires to put out in the future. And the way that we do that is we use a mind, body, spirit approach. Just in
Okay.
the first introduction, when you think of the word Shakti, it truly is this like boundless energy that is in our solar plexus chakra in every
Mm.
human being that is surrounded and embodied with creativity, sustainability, destruction, and motivation. So it is both responsible for creation and an agent of change. So what I like to tell clients is what I get to do, what I am blessed and
Mm.
privileged to do is to awaken the Shakti within you. But you have what it already takes to heal yourself. And the mind, body, spirit approach, the mind is the traditional psychotherapy. It's
Yeah.
understanding how your thought patterns, your belief systems are all colored by your past experiences, and they directly impact the relationship you have with yourself and with the
Hmm.
world. So we get to do
Wow.
that, yes. Then we do the body. And then for so many South Asians and Asian Americans, we hold trauma in our body. I'll give you a great example. In the Hindi language, we have thousands and hundreds of words for love: love for friend, love for family, love for food, love when you meet someone and you're flirting, love when you fall in love, when there's deep love. I mean, so many perspectives of love. But when it comes to things like deep depression, anxiety,
Mm.
schizophrenia, worry, we don't really have language for it. And so the body needs to cope. And what it does is it penetrates those experiences into the bones and muscles because it's not being expressed. And so a
Mm.
lot of our work is somatic, and we're getting people in touch with their body, helping release those emotions through, could be EMDR, it could be brain spotting, compassionate touch. We're so removed from just lovingly touching our bodies and self-soothing that going back to those old practices are powerful. And the last piece is spirit. And that is what I call Shakti. It's trying to connect with something greater than yourself, greater than your day to day. When you connect with that, not everything is tunnel vision. You're connected to this
Hmm.
greater vision. That could be God, spirit, energy, purpose, goal, soul, inner love. We get to figure out the definition that resonates with you. So that process, a lot of the work that we do is holistic. It feels
Hmm.
like a regular therapy session in the sense that it is 50 minutes, you're going to meet with a therapist, but the process and the evolution is deeply unique and personalized.
Wow, yeah, it is. It's so unique. I don't know that I've ever heard of like incorporating all three aspects, but they are definitely interconnected. Like you were saying earlier with your own story, like when we're younger, we face a lot of experiences, but at that time we don't have the tools that we need to deal with it. We just like keep it in. We may not even know that it's a big deal because we're like children, right? Like if somebody like something traumatic happens and we may not even realize that it's traumatic, but it could still be
And we're
affecting
told
us.
don't cry or stop crying, right? Just get
Yeah,
over
yeah.
it or go pray it away. And so that record keeps playing. And so we dismiss ourselves, we gaslight
Hmm.
ourselves from a very young
Yeah,
age, as you pointed out.
yeah. And you mentioned EMDR. What is that?
Ooh, so it's a evidence-based modality, which means it's been studied
Mm.
and research has shown time after time that it is effective. And it's this rapid eye movement that brings unconscious trauma to the front to deal with. And a lot of the times our
Mm.
traumas are in our bodies. 80% of the unconscious mind is in the body, even more so for a female, which is why dancing and creative expressions and the movement of body
Mm.
is so healing for someone who really has a strong feminine sense to them.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like, there's always like chronic pain or like undiagnosed, or sorry, like, yeah, undiagnosed cause of like certain things. And I feel like some of it could be linked back to things like this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the mind and the body are separate at all. They're all interconnected. And again, I go back
Hmm.
to Asian American communities. When you have physical health illnesses, the chance that it is connected to mental health is very high. Things like, most
Yeah.
commonly we're known for things like headaches, backaches, stomach aches. That gut and mind interaction are so connected. People don't realize that serotonin, which is responsible for our moods, our depressions, our anxiety, it's actually built in the gut initially and transfers up.
Mm.
And South Asians are known to have gut issues. And I can't help but wonder, is it the
Mm.
physical or is it the mental that's causing it?
Right.
And how are they intertwined?
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a good point. Um, yeah, just processing it all.
Yeah, right.
Um, hmm. Okay. So speaking of that, like you were saying, South Asians and having gut issues, like how does mental health differ from like South Asian women compared to South Asian men, or just like South Asian women compared to non-South Asian women from your experience?
Yeah, that's a really great question. In my experience, I will say mental health manifests universally. However, the experience between community, culture, genders is deeply personalized and colored by our own cultural expectations, roles, the varying levels of
Mm.
stigma that come based on gender. And so for South Asian women, these factors are intertwined uniquely, affecting their mental health in a different way from men. And I'll be curious to see how much of this resonates with you, and also think about if what's resonating with me, just being South Asian women here.
Yeah.
But South Asian women, I think that one of the things is just cultural expectations and roles. From the beginning of time, South Asian women have often had to navigate these like complex roles that demand so much of them emotionally and mentally. They're really seen as the typical primary caregivers, and they're responsible for all things when it comes to children, from taking care of the household, for managing the husband and the dynamics, and um,
Mhm,
let
mhm.
alone keeping the moral code of the family together. And if there's any shame that's brought on the family, it's usually the
Mhm.
responsibility of the female to be able to manage that and to dispel it.
Hmm.
And so you can see the significant amount of stress, of anxiety, of pressure that's put on these women. Historically, if we look at it back in the day in the South Asian community in India, there was this concept of sati, where there was
Mm.
this expectation for women to burn themselves with men, with their partners when the partners passed, as a reflection of their devotion to their marriage, to their partnership. And so that idea of people pleasing, that idea of doing
Mhm.
for others, that idea of obligation really leads to the philosophy that they may not have a life of their own and their life is governed by others, right? And you can
Yeah.
imagine, if we're born into this world, we come with so much curiosity, so much excitement, so much wildness and aliveness, but sometimes that's robbed for some South Asian women. And so, of course, they suffer from things like people pleasing and self
Mhm.
sabotaging and imposter
Yeah.
syndrome and high anxiety, because there's these attachment styles that they're forced to form that are anxious attachment styles of dependency to their partners.
Yeah.
And this is very different from South Asian men. South Asian men, I am by no means saying they don't have their set of experiences. They absolutely do. There is this huge expectation for South Asian men to perform and to fit this societal role. A
Mm.
big one that is so common in the States is the model minority myth, right? A lot of that pressure falls on men to perform in a certain way as if they have no problems. They've got to have it
Yeah,
together. They've got to put this facade of strength that I had on once upon a time
yeah,
because they can't upset folks in the corporate space. They can't upset their family members. They've got to provide the financial means to take
yes.
care of their family. And in that, they can't express their sadness, their depression, their anxiety. And again, as we talked about it, that it goes into the body. And they have all of these physical health illnesses that they're suffering from. So you can see the experiences are wildly different, but by no means is one worse or better than the other. They're both just really intense and they both deal with immense pressures just in different ways.
Are you enjoying this conversation and topic? Would you love to dive deeper into other health topics with like-minded individuals who have similar health goals as you? If you said yes, then join my free Holistic Hormone Healing Support Facebook community, where we have monthly discussions, weekly check-ins, and more. Check the link in the description for more information and to join. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think what's similar in both is just that expectation to be like perfect or to like like you're saying, not pretend like you don't really have any problems. And I think that further makes like the feeling of shame that if something is going on, like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel this way, or like what's wrong with
Mhm.
me, and then not being able to seek help or get help because of
Mhm.
that. And that's
Yeah.
like, you're saying from my experience, I think with like any health related issues, like even with like PCOS, it like infertility is such a taboo subject, and then the blame is primarily put on women. I don't know why it's doing that
Mhm.
thumbs up thing. Primarily put on women, and then just like not talking about periods, things like that. Like even
Yeah.
with pregnancy or any complications, it's always like, I don't know why, but it's just like expected that, oh, like the woman will be fine, and there's
Yeah.
just not support around any of that.
Ami, I will tell you. So I recently just got through a fibroid surgery called a myomectomy, and this is probably the first time I'm talking about this. And my doctor told me that it's so common in South Asian women.
Hmm.
And in my late 30s, I'm shocked to hear this. For years, I was dealing with things like constipation,
Yeah,
intense period cramps. I would faint. And I kept going to doctors, and they kept saying I'm premenopausal in my early 30s to now. That's what I was being told. And I
that's
knew this
horrible.
was not right. And finally, we discovered when I went through like four doctors, ended up with an Ayurvedic doctor. They were like,
Mm-hmm.
you have fibroids. And I didn't even have one. I had nine massive fibroids. One was the size of a cantaloupe. And I am shocked at how common it is. I had never heard of the word fibroid in my life until I was diagnosed. And it makes me wonder how many women are dealing with this in
Mm-hmm.
private and not
Mm-hmm.
talking about this. And that
Yep.
surgery is probably one of the darkest experiences I have been on. Feeling alone, the psychological
Yeah.
impact, not understanding what is happening to our bodies. And so when you talk about PCOS and periods and all of these feminine
Mm-hmm.
challenges that we have and the shame that we hold, it is
Yeah.
so real. And even talking about it now, I'm like, oof, I wonder what people are gonna think. Like I can feel that coming up, right? But it's how do we break through this? How do we build community and get that
Yeah.
support that we need as women? And the only way is to do the work that you're doing, getting the
And
voices out there and
you.
creating this platform for us.
Yeah. I think it's just like starting with recognizing that, it's not your fault that you have any of whatever it may be, fibroids, PCOS, infertility, like it's not your fault. And so I think that's where part of that shame comes from, like, oh, I did something wrong, or like I suck as a person, or I should have done XYZ and
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had this issue. I
Yeah.
think just taking that out of it can help with
Yeah.
like trying to process it and move
Yeah.
forward
I
and talking about it. So thank you for sharing your story with that, because just talking about it and knowing that like somebody listening will know that, oh my God, I'm not alone in how I feel because somebody else had
yeah,
this similar struggle.
absolutely. And when I told a family member that, gosh, I'm diagnosed with fibroids and I have these masses in my body, the first response was like, well, maybe you should eat better and exercise better and not drink alcohol. And
Oh God.
I eat
Really
well, I
good.
exercise well, I don't binge drink.
uh,
But it was such no
yeah.
surprise, it was such a shock for me. And we've got to change that narrative. And I know it's coming from a
Yeah.
place of love for them, but we've got to change the place of the
Yes.
narrative, so it's not blaming people, but really lifting these women up and supporting them.
Yeah, and this goes back to what you're saying, because like in childhood, when we bring these things up, and it may not be fibroids or PCOS or infertility, of course, in childhood, but it's like smaller things, right? And then we constantly get like gaslit or shamed. And so then as we get older, we have like more complex things to deal with, but we may
Hmm.
not know how to deal with it, which is
Hmm.
why,
Yeah.
it's great for like the services you provide to help us process all this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Do we have a
Yes.
time for a quick short story on that topic?
Yes, of course. Yes.
So, talking about my childhood traumas that we mentioned earlier, I moved to the States from Tanzania right around the time where we were learning about periods and menstrual
Mm,
cycles in school. And English was not my first language, so I was doing the best I could
wow.
to absorb. And, let's say a couple years go by, I get my menstrual cycle very early. So I haven't even hit my double numbers birthday.
Mm,
And I go to my mom and I'm freaking out. I think there's something wrong with me because I'm bleeding. And imagine
yeah,
this like 9-year-old girl, like frantic, trying to hide this from her dad. Her brother's too
yeah.
little. Like, I'm bleeding, I'm bleeding. What's wrong? Am I okay? And the response from my mom was, you should have learned this in school. You need to figure this out on your own. And I'm feeling so emotional even saying it. I was just so shocked, right? Because that little girl gets traumatized at that point.
Yeah,
And I don't think my mom was trying to be a mean person today. I think she
yeah.
was trying to do the best that she could, but that type of love and nurturing that's needed in the South Asian community wasn't there. Whereas we look
Hmm.
at Americans, and their daughters get their period, they're celebrated, they throw events,
Yeah,
and it's such a
yeah.
different experience. We're kept away from temple, we're kept away from certain foods. I was kept away from my dad and not allowed to eat at the same dinner table. And
Mm-hmm. Yep,
so that builds
yep.
up, and as I get older, I remember in dating and I had my period, I would hide it from my boyfriend, I would hide it from my brother. I was so embarrassed and so ashamed that I was bleeding, as if I'd done something
Yeah,
wrong, right? And it's
yeah,
this like natural process. And so yeah, it's hard, this like concept of shame, and how we're taught and brought up, and how it's our responsibility to change that narrative, to heal from that.
yeah. It is. And it's so sad, like you're sharing that now, but it's like it still happens. And like actually we were in New York last week, but I went to the Reuben Museum, which is like primarily like Nepal culture. And there was actually an exhibition about how like women in Nepal have to deal with the same things. Like when they're on their period, they have to like go to the shed. They're
No
like
way.
basically shunned for like, the whole time they're on their cycle, everything you're saying. And I'm like, how is this still like happening? And
Yeah.
it's like you're saying about your mom, it's like she probably got told the same thing when she was experiencing it, like you figure it out yourself. And it's like our generation, we get to change that because now we have the resources, right? We have the understanding, and we're doing the hard work to break these traumas, or generational traumas, I guess they're called, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's so wild that women are shunned in this way, and we're
Yep,
portals. We literally bring spirit into matter through birth. That's kind of magical to think about.
it
Oh,
is.
yeah.
And we could probably get on a whole nother podcast episode about this because I have like all these theories and all these things that, of course, I want to change about, the period space and all that. But yeah, I think that I guess, to end on a positive note, I think that, we are doing what we can now to change that for the future for our daughters and like our nieces and just the women that we care and love. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some tips so we talked about everything that, could be contributing to mental health. What are some tips to get support if someone is struggling with their mental health, or if they're like, oh, I've been to a therapist before, but it hasn't helped. But, I love how you talked about incorporating like the mental, physical, spirit, like, yeah. So there's
Mhm.
just some of your strategies for getting support.
Absolutely. I think in today's world, so many of us are putting in 100% to be the best, to survive. And most people don't realize is that these struggles of depression and anxiety is something that they don't have to suffer with. It's not part of the grind. And
Mm,
so at our practice, we really help folks gain control of their life again. A quote I really love is, "Life is so beautiful. It's not meant to be lived here in our head. It's
mm,
meant to actually be lived outside and within our hearts." And so there are things that we can
yeah.
all do every day to be able to manage that. One of my favorites is just work with a therapist that adopts a narrative therapy technique. And
Hmm.
what that does is it doesn't change your experience, but it offers you a different perspective. Everything in life is a duality. Where there's darkness,
Mhm.
light seeps in. And if you can see the experience from both perspectives, your emotions neutralize. I'm not
Mhm.
asking to go from negative to like this high, because that is a high
Yeah.
expectation and not always realistic. But we get to neutralize our own experiences. And I think narrative therapy does that in a fantastic way.
I wanted
Another
to
one. Uh-huh.
No,
Tell me.
just wanted to add, like your experience that you were talking about, like you sharing the fibroids with someone, like they just told you, they gave you advice that they thought was helpful, but like I feel like you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a therapist, but a therapist gives you like that neutral other perspective that you're talking about in a way that it's like it validates your feelings, but also like shows you that
Yeah.
other perspective. If,
Yeah.
yeah.
100%.
Okay. Okay.
I do my own healing. And so I was telling my person, like, I feel so much grief about getting these fibroids out because it's been with me since I was a young age, since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's okay to feel grief because it's a part of your body you're removing.
Yeah.
And if you want a baby, you need to do it. Right. So you get to see
Yeah.
both perspectives and hold both emotions. And that's so important to feel validated.
Yeah, definitely. And that's
Yeah.
why I think seeking like professional help is very good and not just like it's great to have our friends and family, but they don't have like the experience, the knowledge, the tools, the resources to support us in the way that we may need.
And because they love us so much, they're so judgmental and biased in their own opinion because
Mm.
they know what's best for you from their perspective, right?
Yeah, that's one
Whereas
way of putting it.
a culturally competent therapist is
Yeah.
unbiased. They're looking at only you, helping only you. And so their perspective is dedicated to you. It's very different. Something that I like to tell folks is rest. This sounds so simple and basic, but most people don't realize we have
Mm.
7 different types of rest. And we just think
Oh,
about
wow.
rest as sleep. And
Hmm.
right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And so practice rest. There's physical rest, and that is, yes, the sleep and really regulating the body circulation. And you can do this also through stretching, you can do this through yoga, through massage. The
Mm.
second type of rest is mental rest. This is so important for so many of us who are in survivor mode. And this is like turning off the stimulation in your brain and allowing it to just dissipate. I really love to do this by putting work aside and going for a walk, taking a few breaths, closing my eyes, being mindful. The third one is social rest. And social rest for me is to be around people where I feel energized and fulfilled as an extrovert. But for an introvert, a social rest might be being around just one person that they feel alive with and not a crowd of community. And these are people that are not related to the work. They're not always trying to get your advice. They're really filling that cup of joy inside of you. The fourth one is spiritual rest. Many of us don't really do this, but it's connecting with that sense of the deeper sense of you, that higher self, that Shakti within you. You can do this through prayer. You can do this through meditation. You can do this through community involvement and volunteering. There's hand over heart, I think, and hearing your heartbeat. That's spiritual rest. And then, that goes into just our next three, which is emotional rest and taking a break from all that heaviness that we experience with emotions. And I like to do this by one, if I need an outlet, being vulnerable and watching a movie that's going to make me cry so I can release it all. And the other end, like, so guilty, scrolling on Instagram and watching solely funny reels where I am crying because I'm laughing so hard. So that's emotional rest. And the last two is sensory rest. It's putting your phone away, putting the computer away, putting the TV away, and just not letting that stimulation take over. We really thrive in being in a state of boredom. That is where ideas are generated. But let me ask you, when was the last time you were actually bored?
I have no idea. I wish I had time to be bored, man.
Right?
Yeah.
And last one, I think for folks in the entertainment industry, creative rest is so important. This is doing the art, the movement, the dance, not for work, but for something that brings you joy. I love that you went to a museum. That's part of creative rest. It's looking and being inspired and engaging with other people's art and practice. So I know you asked for three, but in my rest, I gave quite a bit there.
No. Yeah, that's really good. Really good. I learned a lot. We talked about a lot of things. What is like one or two like small, super small action items that listeners, viewers can be like, okay, after this episode, I can do XYZ, which I know for everyone it'll be different, but what is like a very small actionable step or like questions that maybe they can reflect on to get the answer for themselves?
That's a great question. I would say the first one is when you are having bottom level emotions like anxiety or depression, it's putting your hand on your heart and closing your eyes and hearing your heartbeat and asking yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? That is part of somatic healing. And what you realize is all our emotions are good. They're just trying to communicate to us and protect us. And you'd be surprised at what you can hear. Everything you need to heal is within you. The second takeaway is when the weekend comes around, ask yourself, what kind of rest do I really need? Take a look at the 7 types of rest and pour into that one, or maybe 2 of those 7 types. I think doing that strategically, you're going to have more energy. You're going to move from survivor mode into actually thriving, being, and observing. So those are the 2 things I like to do all the time, and I would encourage.
That's great. And that's where we get the answers that we need. But I love how you said that like all our emotions are trying to tell us something. Like we live in a world where it's like you just pretend to be happy, or like why are you sad, or you're so privileged, you have all this stuff, what do you have to be sad about? And then it's like okay, but no, it's just like allowing yourself that no, like I am sad about something, what am I sad about? And then going from there. I like that.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, you'll have to keep me
Yes.
updated and let me know which type of rest that you pull yourself
Yes,
into.
yes. Something that allows me to be bored apparently is what I need. But no, I did actually in that last episode, I did emphasize that, it's like figuring out your priorities in the sense that like making time for these things, right? Like you just said on the weekend rest, but like people are like, oh, I don't have time, I don't have time. But it's like, okay, what are your priorities? And then are you giving yourself from a full cup? Like, do you need this rest so that like do you need to rest on Saturday so that whatever you have on Sunday, like you can give your best to that? So that's just
Mm,
another thing as well.
yeah. Yeah, that's so great. Such a great reflection. Yeah.
Well, how can viewers and listeners connect with you? Where can they find you and your services if they're interested in working with you?
I am an extrovert. So come and just say hi to me. You can do that, through our website, which is www.shakti therapyhealing.com. We're also on Instagram at Shakti Therapy. Send me DMs. I share so many tips. I share my own challenges, which I know most of you are probably also dealing with. So there's a lot of things that you can do with just my own perspective. I share a lot of evidence-based modalities on there, things that you can add to your day quickly to be able to move through that anxiety and depression. And of course, I'm also reachable over email, and that's info@shaktitherapyandhealing.com. If you Google me, I'm everywhere. And I'll put a quick plug in. If you are South Asian and you are looking for support, reach out to us at Jiva Mental Health on Instagram and also through our website.
And you guys have like an event coming up in person for people. Can
Yes,
you tell us
Ami,
about
great
that?
memory. So for Jiva Mental Health, we do these beautiful gala meets panels. So you get to celebrate, look your best, enjoy the evening, and meet amazing people, and be witness to these wild, raw stories of South Asians expressing themselves. You don't go home sad, you go home celebrating because we're gonna dance the night out after. So October 9th is World Mental Health Month. And on October 12th in Los Angeles, we will be having our South Asian Mental Health Charity Gala with Jiva Mental Health. Come join us. It's going to be an incredible experience. We've sold out at every LA event here,
Awesome.
and we're so excited to welcome community into this space.
Wow, that
And
sounds amazing. I'm like, should
yeah,
I fly out from North Carolina to come to that?
absolutely,
I
Avi.
might, I might, I might. I'll
I
let you
have an extra
know.
bedroom. Come stay.
Now it's getting more and more tempting. Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. Like I literally learned so much on this in this conversation. I'm like, oh my God, I want more. But I'll include all the links and information in the show notes for people. But yes, thank you so much for sharing your time and knowledge with us.
Thank you so
And
much
for
for
everything you
having me.
do. Sorry,
Oh,
and for everything you do for the community, like setting up the nonprofit and just like starting the Shakti therapy in general, because that's not easy to do either. That's like a whole nother conversation, like the business side, but
yeah,
not for this.
right.
But yes, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's truly a labor of love. It's my passion, my purpose, and it's work like this that allows me to connect with people like you, women like you who are doing amazing
Yes,
work. So thank you
yes.
for allowing me to be in your energy space and to be in partnership with you.
Yes, I love it. I know. I love just having this platforms to connect with people like you too, and just provide these resources and conversations. Like, people can listen to this, they can share this episode with other people, and then it's like, hey, let's talk about what they had a conversation
Yeah,
about just to get that
absolutely.
conversation going. So, yes,
Absolutely. We lift ourselves by lifting each other. Yeah.
yes, that's true. I love that. Well, to conclude the episode, just a reminder for everyone, be kind to yourself, be patient, and focus on progress, not perfection. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something new, please share it with someone who can also benefit from it. I'd love to connect with you. Send me a DM on Instagram at holistic.hormones.pharmacist.